Research shows that kids getting involved in the work of the home helps them to exhibit higher self-esteem, to be more responsible, to be better at asking questions of clarification, reporting back in when they're finished, or asking for support. These children perform better academically and have more successful personal relationships. And so it's really not about getting a kid to do a chore. It's about empowering, making them feel trusted, and making visible the scope of this work. It's only when we share with the rest of our family that others can begin to recognize, notice, and feel the weight of all of this and begin to share it.
Welcome to the Marriage and Motherhood Podcast. I'm your host, Michelle Perda. As a marriage coach who's married with 3 kids, I know how much parenthood could change a marriage. If flirting, laughing, and having fun together feels like a thing of the past, then I'm here to teach you that marriage doesn't have to feel so hard with your parents, and your marriage can thrive even when you're in the season of raising kids. Whether you're in a good place in your marriage and you just want to continue growing together, or you're wondering if you even like your spouse anymore, this podcast has something for you. Join me here each week as we dive into what it takes to help your marriage grow, and maybe even do a 180. You'll learn ways to handle conflict better, bring that spark back into your relationship, as well as learn how to improve other areas of your life from my lovely guest experts. Are you ready for the next stage of your life and marriage? Let's dive in. Hello. Welcome back to another episode of the Marriage and Motherhood Podcast. I am so excited for the guest I have for you today, because this is a topic that you hear me just dabble in every so often, but I'm so thrilled to dive into this actual topic of lightening the load on you. I mean, I feel like society and generations past have painted this picture of what a woman's supposed to do at home when she has her own family, right? We're supposed to be the mom, the wife, the maid, the chauffeur, all of the things. And it's like, we were never meant to be all of these things and sane at the same time. And so here I have today, Lori Sugarman-Li. She wrote this phenomenal book. She's also a family coach. And we're going to be talking about something that is so important that if you don't already do this, I want you to just stop what you're doing and keep an open mind, because this is going to help you feel more joy in your home, feel less resentful towards your family. And this is all about involving your whole family in the division of labor, not just, hey, how come I'm doing everything and let me lash out on people because I'm resentful and tired, but how to incorporate your whole family and the benefits behind it. So Lori, thank you so much for being a part of the show. I'm so thrilled that we got connected. Lori, for the people who are new to you, can you please let them know where you're from, how old your kids are, and how you got to start doing the work that you do in helping families?
Well, thank you for such a powerful introduction. I love to know that this is a passionate topic for your audience, and I'm really honored to come and share the tools and experiences that brought me here. So I'm based in Chicago now. I have 2 sons, aged 13 and 15. And really, my mission is to make the unpaid, invisible work of care visible and valued, and most importantly, shared. And I came to this by way of my own experience with being devalued. I'll rewind a little bit. I had a 15-year career in marketing and strategy, actually was in Canada at this time, living in Toronto, and working most recently for Four Seasons Hotels and Resorts, which you can imagine was a really fabulous gig when I was a young single woman. Fast forward to having my first baby, and the demands of that job made it quite complicated. And so my husband and I decided that I would pivot from the economy of commerce to the economy of care. And I brought with me all of the, high standards for performance and contribution that I had in my professional life. And I, was full on in my home and also full on in my community and working in charities, and actually was delighted with how much I was thriving in that role after such a long sort of paid professional career. And with that, we had the chance to move our family internationally through my husband's job. We moved to London, which of course, theoretically was in support of his job, but I did all of the work of that move, right? Which is not only the logistics of leaving and landing, but like really reestablishing your entire life, your entire family. And when I got there, I found that my real opportunity for connection and depth in the community was by raising my hand for sort of like the unpaid work of community. And so this became really what I was known for. I was the head of the parents committee and, chair of all the events and all this kind of stuff. And to me, it had tremendous value. To my husband, it had tremendous value, and to the community that I was living in. We had a second international opportunity that moved us here to the US. And when we landed in Chicago, my husband and I sort of recognized that we were here without any kind of support system. We have no family here. We didn't know anybody at all. And he said to me, as we're establishing all of our like new grounding documents, wills, insurance, et cetera, we should look at getting you disability insurance, because if God forbid anything happens to you, he said, I would have to take a leave from my job and do all of this that you do for the family. And I said, yeah, that sounds reasonable. So we filled in all the forms and went through all the rigmarole, only for this insurance agent to say to me, I don't understand. If something happens to you, there's no loss. Like, you don't get paid. What's this loss that you're perceiving? And I was like, I looked at him and sort of like incredulously. And it was one of those moments that you just sort of, you can't ever go back from that moment of someone implying that all of these contributions that you're making, yes, they are unpaid, but they have tremendous value. And my recognition that there was this sort of societal devaluation of this work. And my experience was upon landing in the US, but this is a global phenomenon. Like, let's be clear, right? Women around the world are carrying the bulk of unpaid work, invisible labor, upwards of 80% globally. And in addition to that, we have 5 fewer hours of leisure time per week. And all these things kind of were bubbling in me. And I was like, what am I going to do to like reframe this for society? What can my contribution be? At the time, I was, quote unquote, a stay-at-home mom. I didn't have a platform for impacting government policy, for impacting corporate policy. And I thought, well, what can I do? What can I do? And I looked back at my decade of full-time involvement with my children, with their schools, and with children's charities worldwide. And I thought, okay, let me talk to kids. And so I decided in that moment to write a children's book, and Our Home, The Love, Work, and Heart of Family was born. And I wrote it to spark powerful conversations for families about the value of caring for one another and the space that we share, and also to break the cycle of, for women and girls, continuing to carry this load.
I mean, that's the podcast right there. Okay, bye guys. I'm just kidding. Lori, I'm just so amazed that you took your frustration and anger and you turned it into something that was a movement, but is a movement. And I'm so thrilled that things are turning around. Things are finally changing. I mean, we've got a long ways to go, but yes. I love that this is more of a conversation that people are talking about.
It sure is.
This is something to consider with how we're changing how we raise our kids. It's a lot of work, but it is so worthwhile, because let me tell you, my experience was my mom, sadly, she had her mom pass away shortly after they immigrated to the US from Hong Kong. And so she was raised by her grandma, who survived as a refugee. So she's pretty hardcore. And because my mom was the youngest female in the family, she was left to do all of the chores with her, the cooking, the cleaning. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So she didn't really have a proper childhood compared to her older siblings. And so because of that, when she was raising my sister and I, we barely had any chores, because
that
I
makes
think
so
that
much
she
sense.
thought she was
Sure.
saving us, right?
Absolutely.
She wanted us to have a better life.
Mhm.
Come college, I didn't know how to do laundry. I didn't know how to cook. I think the only thing I did at home when I was living with them was dishes. So that's the only thing I knew how to do. I didn't know how to clean a bathroom. It's like very embarrassing to say this, right? But as I got older, I was like, I don't like that. It kind of makes me feel helpless instead of confident. And so I vowed to not do the same thing for my kids. I vowed to help set them up for success as an adult.
Brilliant.
And so when my stepson, I want to say he was like 7, 8, somewhere around there, he had forgotten he had gum in his pocket. And we did laundry. And at that point, I was like, okay, it's time. You're going to start washing your own clothes. Because really, if you think about it, how difficult is it to throw your clothes in the laundry machine, pour some detergent in there, and press some buttons? It's really not that difficult. And so from that point on, I was like, okay, there's got to be a list somewhere with age-appropriate tasks.
For sure.
And I've been trying to go by that for my kids, even down to my 5-year-old now. And thank goodness for, digital home organizers. They make it really fun for them now to like earn stars and whatever. But I just love what you do. And I want to kind of dive into what the differences are between a household that does involve the kids in all of the things versus a house that doesn't. Because I know many listeners out there are like, wait, why would you have such young kids do work? They should play. That's their job.
Really.
And I want you to dive into that because, yes, kids should have fun, but also they have a future. Like they're future adults here. So
you just touched on so many important topics, and I hope I can cover them all. But something that you sparked that I want to touch on, which is so important, is that the big opportunity for the families of today is really to shift away from maybe how we were raised, right? Which was like a because I said so kind of model.
Top down.
To really like a because we agreed to model. And, you said something important, which is that there's this real inclination to like want kids, just let them play. They're little. They only have one childhood. 100%. What that says is we want that time and space for them to be full of joy. It doesn't necessarily dictate that only playing on the floor with blocks and dolls can lead them to that joy, right? Kids are so thoughtful. They have so much to contribute to important family conversations. And the reality is that they just want to be a part of important things. And so what I suggest to families is, a great way to find your North Star is to sit down and talk about values. And I know that feels like a big word for little ones, that you can reframe it and into something like, what feels really important, or what do you love the most about our family? And when you sit down and ground yourself in value, it helps you create standards for how you want to live. And at the same time, it also helps you recognize we might be doing some things that actually are not aligned with our values. And maybe we're doing them because we see other people doing them and we think we have to, or because we fear judgment by others. But the real chance for us here is to get grounded in what brings our family peace, what brings us the order that works for us and the way that we are all wired and for the cadence of our life and for the way that we flow, and what makes us feel like connected and safe. And that's different for every single family. And so the chance to invite kids into that conversation and say, what do you love about your space? Or what makes you feel the happiest about how our family talks to one another? They have so much to say, and these conversations could be so revealing and instructive.
Yeah, no, I love what you said about talking about values, because another thing that popped up was that it helps kind of shape their identity for themselves. Right? Like, hey, like we are, it's like a sense of pride almost, like, oh, as a family, we are kind, supportive.
Yes.
And we are neighborly, we care about our community, and we take care of each other. And there's really nothing that can replace that sense of
unity that can build.
Yes, beautiful. And then also getting back to what you said about kids, there is research actually that shows that kids getting involved in the work of the home helps them to exhibit higher self-esteem, to be more responsible, to be better equipped at questions of clarification when they don't understand something, reporting back in when they're finished, or asking for support. A lot of these skills, being able to deal with even frustration or adversity, help them later on in life. And the longer research goes to show that these children perform better academically and have more successful personal relationships. And so it's really not about getting a kid to do a chore. It's about empowering. It's about making them feel trusted. It's about involving them in important things and making visible the scope of this work that many kids don't even have access to, because it is done when they are at play, at school, or asleep. So much of this work, when women own it alone, rests in the mental and the emotional. And it's only when we begin to share the scope of it with the rest of our family that others can begin to recognize, notice, and feel the weight of all of this and begin to share it.
Yeah, and it helps them feel useful too. I mean, it's always nice to feel useful, right?
So nice.
I know that my daughter is always like, what else can I do to help? Because she's 5, right? So like, obviously
brilliant.
The earlier you start this, the easier it is to incorporate it. But what do you recommend to those who do have older children? Maybe they didn't even think of doing this before because they thought that they were doing their kids a favor by, avoiding the frustrating moments, like, the resistance of having to do chores and like, oh, forget it, I'll do it myself. So how would you guide those parents in incorporating this part of it?
So as a parent, I think the most beautiful thing to do is to go to your kid and say, hey, I realized today there's something I might have missed. And I heard about this opportunity that could actually be so important for you. And I'm so sorry I didn't know. I didn't recognize it before, but I have information now that is making me feel really like excited or optimistic, or, recognizing that this is important. And I'd love to talk to you about it. And also, the recognition that you want your kids to thrive when they are grown and flown, right? And holistic parenting is so much more than just making sure that they have a resume of academic and athletic or, creative success. They have to know how to be whole human beings in giving care to themselves and to those with whom they're going to share space. They're going to go to college. They're going to have a roommate. Or listen, I'm at the point where, believe it or not, I'm starting to talk to my 15-year-old about inviting maybe a romantic interest into his own space someday, and how to make that a comfortable experience. And so, yes, of course, we want our kids to thrive in was most close in, right, for their future success. We want them to get the grades and be on the teams and have the success and the play and whatever they're doing. But if they get into that college and then don't know how to make themselves a nourishing meal, or they don't even know that they need to change their sheets regularly, right? Then that's going to impact their thriving at that stage. And so while they're still with us, it's a huge opportunity to wrap our arms around them and say, I didn't realize it, but now I do. Can we talk about how to make this shift?
Yeah, I think framing is everything, right? If you're like,
sure is.
Okay, here's a ton of things that you didn't used to do before, but now you got to do it. That was a rough start.
Exactly. And it's so funny because my previous paid career was in marketing and branding. And so to me, when I look at all of the shifts that we have the opportunity and really must make, with a lot of this language and positioning, like, it's marketing. I mean, we talk about this stuff as chores, which, if you look up the definition of that word, it's dreaded, repetitive, unappealing work. But this is the word that we use to describe nourishing and nurturing our families and caring for our investments and adhering to community and municipal standards. If you think about it, this is the work of gratitude for all that we have and for those with whom we share our space. And it's really up to us to begin to shift the language, shift the energy, and shift the perception so that kids will recognize, yeah, I have a place in the wellness of our family. This is not about, and I talk to little kids a lot when I do readings or school visits about care. And it's a concept that is very often new to them. They feel it. They often describe it as like it's a hug or it's mommy or it's whatever. But the opportunity to talk about it as the wellness of the whole family that everybody plays a really important part in. And it's not to say that that's always going to be equal parts, because we all have different capacity. We're all wired differently. And this is like a huge point that's really important to honor with the different members of your family, right? Because even in the same household, we approach things differently. We have different needs for support, but just recognizing all of this and changing the energy and the language that we use to describe this work is like such a massive first step to changing the flow of your family and the vibe of your family.
No, absolutely. And the vibe is like everything, right? That's how you set your intentions. That's how it feels. And I think as we shift towards parenting with keeping our kids' feelings in mind, like feel like a much more collaborative conversation rather than I'm the boss and I'm going to tell everyone what they're doing, which doesn't feel good at all, especially as kids, because that's all they hear all day long is what to do, what not to do. And my kids, they each have chores, and they know that, if they do it, they get to earn stars, and their stars, turn into rewards. But besides that, we always say thank you for what they do. They haven't adopted quite yet to thank us for everything we do, but at least we have at the minimum a practice where when we sit down, they all thank me for making food. And then I thank them for setting the table. I thank them for clearing the table, putting the food away. And then I go do the dishes. It's like, okay, if we all want to play this game after dinner, we all have to clean up. Otherwise, mommy and daddy have, tuck you in and go back and finish the work. So like, let's work together so we can hang out. So it's more of like a collective goal that we're working towards. So they see it's not just, we're not being mean. Like, this is the reality. Stuff needs to get done.
Yeah, it's so important to constantly reinforce all of that. And I am such a huge proponent of the element of gratitude and recognition in all of this. And one of the language shifts that I sometimes talk about, thank you is obviously such a beautiful place to start. But what I'd love to suggest as well is taking it even a step further and being specific about the impact that not just the kids, of course, this is, the way that you would talk to your partner and the way that you would hope that they would speak to you as well. So my 13-year-old, for example, is like the chief laundry folder of our family. He's really grown his muscle into this role. He started with folding like the little cleaning cloths, and now he does it all. And so, when I see him doing that, I will be very specific about what I was able to do during the time that he was doing that was so valuable to me, that was so beneficial to me. So, I noticed that you came home straight after school and saw that the laundry was on top of the dryer and you folded it immediately. And like, I just want you to know, it was really meaningful for me to see that you don't actually need to be reminded to do that anymore. And also during the half an hour that it took you to do that, I got to finish a really important proposal that I was working on. And I really feel like your contribution made that possible for me.
Love that. Yeah, we always talk about like my son, he kind of turns into like a screen zombie sometimes, but like the last several days when we say, okay, it's time to do this and shut that off, we in the past have had to actually use our app to turn off the outlet in order for him to come down because he just gets sucked in so much. But over the last few days, he has come down on his own. And I'm like, wow, that was amazing, Dylan. We didn't even have to remind you. We are so impressed. We love this. And this encourages to allow you to use this more often. And that actually didn't take any extra energy for us to have to keep reminding you. So like, we're so grateful.
Brilliant.
So like, because we have this energy that we didn't use to remind you, now we have energy to do this with you. It's like, this is a reality that we don't talk about as parents, is how draining it is sometimes to manage, like I get it. They're easily distracted. They're kids, their brains, whatever, but it doesn't lessen the impact that it has on us as the family managers.
And all that language that you just gave as an example is so filling of their tank. Like to be told what a major impact they had on like the wellness of your family, on your time, on your energy. They absolutely are absorbing that. And something else you touched on that I'd love to go back to, which I think is a really important element of the language shift. You talked about using collaborative language in place of always like the suggestion of help. And I think that is so powerful and something that I also talk about a lot. When we as mothers, again, we know that we as women are carrying the bulk of this work. When our family waits to be asked for help, the implication is that we are the owners of this work and that the rest of the family is sort of waiting in the wings for the instruction, for the lists, right? And it sort of eliminates the responsibility for them to actually be noticers, to be owners. And when I'm coaching families, like the biggest tool that I suggest is really task ownership by all. The division of tasks where there's like an owner and a helper is forever going to be less efficient and less effective than when somebody owns something from tip to tail. And using collaborative language is so much more impactful in terms of like engaging that. It also like really shows kids how much you trust them to invite them in. Also, it gives them the opportunity to do things in their own way, which, by the way, is sometimes better than what we would have suggested. But even if it isn't better, it's a really critical building block and stepping stone for them to figuring out, like, how can I tackle this? How can I succeed in this? And I just want to finish by saying, this is not about pawning off work onto kids. Like, not in the slightest. And you touched on this earlier. It's about helping them to thrive because we see their future, right? We see that, women have 5 fewer hours of leisure time. Actually, that trend is reported in girls as young as 8. And so this model that we have now is unsustainable, where the work of care and home and family is gendered and, as not seen as valued. We have to make these changes for our kids, for their partnerships and their families.
No, absolutely. And I love that you said notice because it reminds me of a post I saw somewhere. I don't remember who I saw it from, but she's also someone that does a lot of work around the division of labor. And she was teaching in a post to play a game with kids to help expand their noticing skills, right?
Oh, great.
There's this joke that like guys don't notice things as well. And I mean, there's something to it, but that doesn't mean it can't be developed. And
That's right.
So when we're done with dinner, I'm like, okay, clear off the table. That means only this thing can be on it. So like for us, right? It's like only placemats. And it's like, okay, I still notice something. Who else can notice it? So of course, if it's a game, they're like, oh, let me spot where that thing is. Or I'll count like, oh, I still see 5 things out of place. Who can find them? Work together. Because I don't want to pin them up against each other either.
Yes.
And that has been such a game changer. Now they're excited to find it because like, oh my gosh, I should find it instead of like, oh, why am I not done yet? Why am I still doing this? And like back to what you're saying, the language shifts, like that makes such a big difference.
Yeah, that's so clever. I love how you gamify everything.
Yeah, I mean, my kids are young enough, not the 15-year-old, but like my 2 other ones are young enough for it to actually work. So I'm so grateful. So tell me, you had mentioned earlier about a family agreement. Can you tell us more about that? How do we start this conversation and what is a family agreement? What goes into it?
Yeah, so I touched on it a little bit, but I'd love to talk a bit more. It's really the opportunity to come together and begin to talk about like what's working for your family. Because the reality is that we are racing through life. We race through every day. Each family has its own agreements about like where they're going, who's getting them there, where they're meeting, what they're eating, what they're doing, and da, 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 da. And then like the next day it happens again. And we very infrequently take the time to pause and reflect and say, like, guys, is this working for us? Like, are we optimized? Like, are we communicating in the best way? Like, is everybody getting what they need? are we feeling overwhelmed in any areas? Like, is there anything we need to shift? And again, the nucleus of all of this is being able to identify your values. And everybody has a voice at that table. And this is critical because it has to shift away from a conversation that only mom feels the weight of. Again, it goes back to what I said before, because we agreed to it. And this is that agreement. And it becomes your North Star as a family. And when things go off the tracks, which they always will, you have something to go back to and say, remember we had that conversation. And by the way, it's not just one conversation, it's constantly being updated and reframed and whatever as times change and your family needs change. But being able to go back and say, oh, remember we talked about this being really important to us, or remember we agreed that we were all going to show up in this way. And it just becomes what leads to the standards that you set for your family. And again, the standard, it's not about perfection. It's about you feeling comfortable in your own space. And again, every family is going to look at that differently. And that's the beauty of it, is that you get to determine the flow and the vibe of your own home. If you decide as a family, it's actually not important to us to make our beds. No one else knows. No one else cares. And you can release that. And so it's just having a chance to talk about all these little things. I think it's so critical for partners to do this. I mean, before we get married or, whatever the form of our partnership is, we very often will have a conversation about things like religious beliefs or whether or not we want to have kids. But like, how often are we talking about, hey, how do you take out the garbage? Like, what do you see that being, for our relationship ongoing? But guess what? Taking out the garbage happens like at least once a week for the rest of your life. And so it behooves you really to have a conversation about like what's meaningful about this, like what stresses you out about this, like who wants to do it, who can own it, et cetera, et cetera. And that's what the kind of conversations that these family meetings lead to, and that you can capture in your agreements so that you have it in writing and it doesn't just come from mom pushing down.
I love that. I think anything to make us look less like the bad guy and more like, the support line for everyone. Like,
I love that.
That is ideal. Like truly, I view us as the heart of the family. Truly. Yes. And we can so heavily influence everybody's lives. And so why not use that to facilitate a really empowering conversation, to bring everyone together, almost like a round table talking, be like, okay, what kind of home do you want to live in? Like, let's just go around and talk about what that looks like. Oh, I want a clean home. Oh, what does clean mean to you?
Exactly. And by the way, I should have said, this kind of a meeting absolutely can be fun. I mean, you can do it with around ice cream sundaes. Yes. You can do it sitting on the floor underneath a shared blanket where everybody gets to take a turn speaking when they get to hold the wooden spoon. You whatever it is that works for your family, like a big bowl of gummy worms, whatever it is to get people at the table. And, if you notice energy waning, then take a break. It shouldn't it shouldn't feel heavy. It should feel like an opportunity to be heard, to get aligned, to understand, anybody's struggles and address them together.
Yes, I love that. And I think that is very much in line with how we deal with conflict, because this is basically something that can avoid a lot of conflict, right? When we all get on the same page. And I think a lot of people think, well, that's a hard conversation. It's going to automatically be heavy. No, that is just what you've gotten used to feeling like it should be like, but that isn't actually always the case. It doesn't need to be. And so I'm so thrilled to have had you on here. So thank you so much for sharing all of that. So can you share more about your book and what you do to support your clients through your family coaching and where people can connect with you?
Thank you. So first of all, I'm pretty active on my Instagram, which is at Our Home, Our Pride. If you're interested in LinkedIn, I'm at Lori Sugarman-Li. My book, which is Our Home, The Love, Work, and Heart of Family, is available everywhere books are sold. And I'm so passionate about the coaching that I do with families because, these are loving couples, loving families that are just starting to feel resentments creeping in. And what they're lacking is a system and is the language to ward that off and to reframe this again, not as mom's work, kids, chores, but as the work of gratitude that we all share. It's beautiful to see that shift happen with families. I really love what I do.
And I love what you do as well. I so appreciate you coming on here as a guest to share your book and your mission with everyone here. Listeners, go connect with Lori. Go check out her book. I think it'd be a great nighttime story for your kids, especially if they're young. Get them started younger. That is the ideal way to get into this. But of course, if your kids are older, that's okay too. Lori has tons of ways that she can help you frame the conversation in a way that doesn't feel so icky and heavy, but rather light, fun, collaborative, empowering. So go check Lori out. And if you know someone that could benefit from listening to this episode, please share this with them. Better yet, tag us in your story so we can give you a shout out. And if you love the show, please leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you listen. That is what helps this show grow. And I so appreciate it when you do that. But until next time, I'll catch you back here on the next episode. Bye.
That's it for this episode. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed making it. If you did, please send me a message over on Instagram at Michelle Perda Coaching to let me know what you loved most about it. Hearing from my listeners is my absolute favorite. And if you've been loving this podcast, please leave a rating and review. This will help people like you find the show and get the help they need. Catch you here on the next episode. Bye.